I will add a New York Times bestselling author, because that's a new introduction piece for someone who needs no introduction. Liz, kick it off.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Maxwell, for that. And before I get into this, I want to thank everyone on this call for their support, because I know that I would not have become a New York Times bestseller if it weren't for Team Pete. So add that to the list of things I am forever, forever indebted to all of you for. So I really do appreciate that. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. So I realized when I was preparing for this today that it has been 2 years since I've done a call with you guys, since I've moderated something like this. And 2 years ago, I believe it was during the Democratic Convention, I moderated a conversation with, God, have you heard of these guys? Pete and Chasten. And they're not with us today, but let me tell you, we have an all-star crew with us. And so I am so thrilled. I'm so thrilled that all of you could join us. And one thing that, and also a disclaimer for anyone who's been on a Zoom with me, is I have 2 raccoons that masquerade as cats that run around my apartment. So if you see any violence behind me, don't be concerned. It is just 2 poorly behaved domestic animals. But I am so thrilled to be here, and especially on this topic, because, you know, as you guys remember, during Pete's 2020 campaign, he had a lot of unconventional applause lines. You know, he's probably the only one who's ever gotten like standing ovation by talking about how, as president, if he were elected, he would make people's blood pressure go down. But another big applause line that he always had, that always brought people to his feet, was when he talked about how the Democratic Party, and we as a party, need to stop treating the presidency like it's the only office that matters. And that's a really big issue. And that's something we need to, and my camera's blinking, so apologies. I'm hope this is just going to be a temporary thing, but this is something that we need to have an honest conversation about amongst family here, which is that for the last several decades, we have let the Republicans build up at every level of government, and we have let them focus on building out their ranks and building out their benches in state legislatures across the country. And as a result of that attention that they paid to state level races, that's why we saw things like the Dobbs decision. And it is time for us as Democrats to apply the same attention. I'm really, really thrilled to have this group with us, because the Democratic Party will not be a majority party, will not be able to take back the agenda on a whole host of issues in every state across the country, unless we really focus on electing more, Democrats to state House and state Senate in all 50 states. And that is why I am thrilled to start out by introducing, and we have a great group, and I'll introduce each one of them individually, but I want to start with Jessica Post. Jessica Post is the executive director of the DLCC, and there's no one I know who in the Democratic Party who has worked longer and harder than Jessica has to help elect Democrats to state House races. And for so many years, when it wasn't sexy, when people weren't talking about it like they are now, Jessica was plugging away on this. And last cycle in 2020, the DLCC under Jessica's leadership was able to raise $51 million, which is the most in history. And it sounds like a lot, right? It sort of sounds like a lot if you just hear the number in a vacuum. But then keep in mind that a US Senate candidate who lost in Kentucky raised, I think, over $60 million. And can you imagine if we gave Jessica and her group the resources, just a fraction of those resources to apply to state House and Senate races across the country? That could be a difference maker in a lot of important states. So Jessica, I want to hand it over to you and tell everyone on Team Pete about the really important work that your group is doing, and also how people here, we've got 142 people here all across the country and even people internationally, how they can sort of help you in your really, really important mission to elect more Democrats across the country to state houses.
Well, Liz, thank you so much for the generous introduction. Liz and I met way back in our youth in Missouri politics when I was still doing some state legislative work. And, Liz was, I don't know if you were with McCaskill or Jeff Smith at the time. Yeah, at the time. So it was a great time. So I'm seeing, look, a lot of folks in the chat who have state legislatures up this year. Thank you so much to Anthony and WinningThe Era and Maxwell for your support, and for all of you to win Democratic majorities in state legislatures across the country. I think you, better than so many others, recognize that talent can come from the state and local level. And you've seen that with Pete's campaign, and I'm sure you've seen that with so many of these incredible state legislators that we have with us today. So it's an honor to be with Assemblywoman Howdy G, Senator Chevron Jones, and of course, national sensation, Senator Mallory Mcmorrow. So look, our efforts are more important than ever before. For years, Democrats took, as Liz said, for granted that if we held the presidency and Congress, we could protect our values and priorities. But we know right now that we're essentially living in two Americas. In 37 across the country, Democrats control 37 state legislatures, Republicans control 62, including both chambers in Michigan. We've seen great progress, and Assemblywoman Howdy can talk about the progress that happened in Nevada: expansion of voting, universal vote by mail, protection of reproductive choice, restoration of rights for felons who serve their time, and more and more and more. That's just the tip of the iceberg about what happened in Nevada. So we have this incredible story of work in progress that's happening in these Democratic states versus the horror stories that are happening in states like Michigan and Florida, where the Don't Say Gay bill is out there, where the governor isn't allowing the pediatric COVID vaccines. In Michigan, where people did the dress rehearsal for 1/6, and we've seen just horrible restrictions on abortion rights. So while we've seen great things out of this administration, and the only issues do not get solved in Washington, D.C., they get solved across the state. But we need your help. I go in and fundraise after Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And as it turns out, some people do not want a picture of me on their mantle. They would much rather have a picture of someone that's much more nationally known. So we appreciate any help that you can provide. Our candidates really count on us to have their back. We work with campaigns every day. And, thinking about a state like Nevada, where the presidential election was quite close, we could have seen a very different situation if Nevada had a Republican state house. We could have seen fake audits and maybe worse. So the pathway to the presidency, electoral votes, redistricting, voting rights, access to abortion, and also, as I've talked with Secretary Pete now about the distribution of federal funds and so many of the programs that he's trying to implement. Those distribution of federal funds happen through state legislatures. So I can talk a little bit about our targets. We're focused on protecting the Maine House and State Senate, the Colorado Senate, the Nevada Assembly, the Nevada State Senate, the New Mexico State House, and the Minnesota House. We can flip the Minnesota State Senate, and I agree. Kathy just commented we need the ERA. States have to pass the ERA, right, to get it validated. This just happened in Illinois. Virginia also passed the ERA after we flipped the state legislature. So look, in Michigan, we have great new maps where Senator Mcmorrow could be a voice in the majority. We can flip both the Michigan House and the Senate. We also feel great about the direction long-term that Florida is trending, along with states like Pennsylvania and Arizona. So I want to say to everyone on this call, thank you so much. I hope you'll consider supporting the DLCC. We need you on our team. Our goal at the DLCC is to win 50 state legislative chambers by the end of 2030. So we're on a long-term path in order to take back this country. And if we're able to do that, Democrats will control 70% of the populations in terms of the entire path to the presidency vis-a-vis electoral votes, a huge majority in Congress, and 70% of the population would have access to reproductive choice, where right now 1 in 3 women have lost that. So I really appreciate all the work that you all have done, and it's an honor to be here with all of you today. So I'll throw it back to Liz. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. And so now we are going to go through our other distinguished guests in alphabetical order. And I want to start with Assemblywoman Sandra Howdigi. And I pronounced that right?
Yes, Howdigi.
Howdigi. So I feel like if we could teach the nation how to pronounce Buttigieg, a very tough Maltese last name, that we can pronounce the nation how to do Howdigi. So I tried to do a phonetic spelling, but I don't know if I did it correctly. I think it should be GI. But anyway, Assemblywoman Howdigi is, I'm going to say Sandra, is original member of Team Pete, was one of our most prominent supporters in Nevada. And I would love, Sandra, if you could sort of talk through your story, even though many members of Team Pete may be familiar with you, but also the lay of the land in Nevada and what's at stake.
Absolutely. I would love to just give a brief introduction to myself. Thank you so much again, WinningThe Era. And it's so nice to see so many Team Pete on here. I think it's been a couple of years since I've seen many of you, and I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you in person out here in Nevada when we were campaigning for Pete. I am a proud member, as Pete says, of the Hard to Pronounce Last Name Club, so I wear that badge with honor. But I first ran in 2016, and I am with Jessica. I believe that the state legislatures are one of the most important parts of our government, because we see so much get done at a state level, and we don't have to wait years to see it take effect. Sometimes the bills we vote on can bring hundreds of jobs the very next day. And I think that's so important. But I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants from Mexico who moved to the US for a better life, and they were able to achieve that quintessential American dream. They started a successful small business, they bought a house, they raised a family, they sent their kids to college. I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants from Mexico who is now a Nevada State Assemblywoman. And that's the kind of opportunity that I want for every child in Nevada, whether you're a first-generation American or a fifth-generation American child, like everyone should have that kind of opportunity. And that's why I ran, and that's why I continue to run, because I want to make sure I deliver that to our hardworking Nevada families. Everyone thinks Nevada is a safe state. They've seen what's happened over the last 2 elections, and they assume Nevada doesn't need our help. They're a blue state. And I remind everyone of what happened 2 midterms ago. In 2014, we had a Republican wave sweep through our state. We lost the assembly. They took over control of the Senate. They had control of the governor's office as well. And in 2015, during our legislative session, they came and attacked all of our values. Everything from undoing gun violence prevention laws, right? Instituting preemption, doing away with prevailing wage and project labor agreements for school projects. There were so many things that came under attack. We were fortunate enough to regain control of the Senate and the Assembly in 2016, and we gained, for the first time in over 30 years, in 2018, we finally gained control of the governor's office. And my proudest moment in 2018, with that election, we became the first state in US history to have a female majority state legislature, which is huge. But what we were able to do once we took back the majority is I carried Assembly Bill 291, which was Nevada's most comprehensive gun violence prevention bill in our history. We also, when I chaired legislative operation, we passed our voting rights omnibus bill, which expanded early vote, instituted vote centers, right? So that on election day or early vote, you could go vote anywhere there was an election site. You weren't tied to a precinct location. So if there was a voting center in your office on election day, you could go vote there. We also implemented automatic voter registration, not just at the DMV, but where people go and apply for Medicaid as well, automatically registered to vote. We also instituted same-day voter registration. We made sure that ex-felons were restored their right to vote, and we made permanent mail-in ballot for every voter on the roll. So those are the things that are, I think, at stake, right? If we don't protect our majority in Nevada, those are the first things that they're going to come for, our access to democracy, like our most fundamental right, our right for our voice to be heard. And our former Lieutenant Governor, Mark Hutchinson, started a PAC, the Stronger Nevada PAC, and he's coming after our leadership seats, right? He's coming after us. They think that this is 2014 all over again. It's a well-funded PAC. They're coming after our incoming speaker. I'm the incoming majority leader for next session. They're coming after my seat, and they're coming after our chair of Ways and Means. And they think that they have a really good shot at winning. And so I'm out there doing the work to make sure that everyone knows that Nevada isn't a blue state. We're still a very much purple state. So we need everyone's help to make sure that we're fully funding our campaigns, because we need to protect all of the advancements and know that we're going to do the work necessary to win our races.
Amazing. And what a great advertisement for what you can do when Democrats do control state legislatures. So thank you for that. And next, we a man who should need no introduction to know State Senator Chevron Jones is to know that he is a complete rock star. He's a barrier breaker, and someone who is any room he's in, he can bring people to their feet. But Chev, tell us a little bit more. And he was on Win the Era slate of endorsed candidates in 2020. But Chev, tell us, just reintroduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about the lay of the land and what's at stake in Florida. And, we all have been reading a lot about Florida with your governor. So just it'd be great to hear from you about it.
How much time do we have to talk about Florida? Let's start there, right? Thank you, Liz. It's so good to see you again. I really appreciate it, and to be in this space with all of you, I really appreciate it. My name is Chevron Jones, and I have the awesome privilege again to represent the 35th, now 34th Senate District in Florida. I am the first openly gay state senator elected in Florida's history, but along with that, I am also one who will constantly continue to challenge Ron DeSantis on the bullshit that he has happening in the state of Florida. Let's be extremely clear on that. Let me tell you all something. I want to put this number out there. I'm gonna put two numbers out there, and I want you all to take this in, right? 22 and 3. 22 is the number of years that the Republicans have been in control in Florida. 3 is the number of seats we need in the Senate to get to 19. I'm gonna say again, 22 years, but we need 3 seats. And that has been us eating away throughout the years, looking at and being committed to the long game in us winning back the seats in Florida to at least have a balanced chamber. The reason why I wanted to put that out there is because the only reason why the Republicans in Florida have been able to get away with what they have been able to get away with for so long is because they've held a supermajority in both chambers. Just last year, we got to a place to where now the Democrats in the Senate, we can stop a lot of the bad stuff that they have been trying to do. They have to come to the negotiating table. Right now, we're projected to lose 2 seats. If we go back down to 14 seats, that causes a problem to Florida. That's why organizations like Win the Era, an organization that has been started all across the state, or the DLCC, who Jessica, I know for a fact has met with our team down here in Florida to get the work, is so important. You all see what we're dealing with. We have a governor, I don't even call it culture wars anymore. It is a marginalization of people fight that the governor is on right now, where he's attacking everyone who do not look or think like him. Anybody who can go after Disney World and don't care, that is a dangerous person. And that is exactly what we're dealing with right now. And I did write some notes down because I want to make sure I put all of this stuff out here. Florida is a 1% state. In the last election, the governor only won by 33,000 votes. Think about that, 33,000 votes. And so now what you see in Florida is a great deal of organizations that have plugged in to figure out how can we begin to bridge these gaps in what we're seeing right now. For example, myself, I saw that there was a void in the rural communities for Black and brown people. So what did we do? We partnered with the NAACP. We partnered with UPower. We partnered with People Power, and I started Operation Blackout, which is unapologetically going after Black and brown people in rural communities in Florida. Why? Because we realized that in that last election, we totally forgot about going to engage those individuals, not just during the election time, but also engaging them outside of the election. And so these type of conversations that we're having, that's happening nationally, I'm a firm believer that where Florida goes, so goes the country. But I also believe that, thank you for putting that in the chat, Brian, blackout.vote is the name, is the website. But right now, I know for a fact, if we can rescue Florida from what we're dealing with right now, we can change the trajectory of all this stuff that's happening. Raquel Pacheco, Janelle Perez, Joy Garth-Marcel, those are the 3 seats we need to win in Florida to change the trajectory of what's happening in Florida right now. I would say those names again: Raquel Pacheco, Joy Garth-Marcel, Janelle Perez. Those are the 3 seats we need in Florida that will force Republicans to come to the negotiating table. And I'll end with this, that we are seeing in Florida that the Republicans are rejecting a lot of the policies that are similar to Donald Trump. And so what you see with Charlie Crist just winning the nomination, we saw a great deal of MPAs and Republicans who are going to be crossovers. So if we can get Val Demings, Charlie Crist, those 3 names, and begin to run the numbers up on those, I promise you all, we will be having a totally different conversation on November 9th. I promise you. And I'll bet you a bottle of wine on that.
I might take you up on that.
Take me up on your list.
You know how to get to my heart here.
I got you.
And then finally, last but not least, State Senator Mallory Mcmorrow. Many of you may be familiar with her from her mega viral speech where she took a Republican colleague to task for on her bullshit culture wars attacks against Mallory, and she can talk more about that, but I don't think she needs much more of an introduction than that. So Mallory, please introduce yourself to everyone and tell us a little bit about the lay of the land in Michigan, because I know that that is another state where we are we are this close to being able to flip the state Senate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everybody on this call. And I don't think there could be a better partnership than the DLCC state legislators and Win the Era. Let's talk about that, right? Because I think for a lot of people on this call, this concept of state legislatures may be really complicated. There are 50 states. There are how many seats in all of our state legislatures? Which ones have we lost? Which ones have we gained? But the reality is that state legislatures are our front lines and our last line of defense on everything. I saw a question in the chat. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because Michigan is at this epicenter of this. It is not hyperbole to say that if we do not send a very loud rebuke in Michigan to this version of the GOP that has been taken over by anti-government extremists who will lie, cheat, manufacture culture wars, marginalize, attack people, then we may not have a free and fair election in 2024. Now, I think Democrats, we have had a lot of lessons to learn. We always say this is the most important election of our lifetimes, and that's not untrue. But I think too often, and we have felt this in Michigan too, we all worked really, really hard in Michigan to make sure we didn't elect Donald Trump in 2020. And I felt like a lot of people, I'm sure on this call, when I watched the inauguration of President Joe Biden, I breathed a deep sigh of relief and thought, yes, we're going to get back to normal. It's all going to come back down to earth and we can debate tax policy instead of all the garbage we've been facing for the past few years. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't matter that Donald Trump is not in the White House. This ugliness has been unleashed. And the reality is, you know, the New York Times did a really, really great deep dive a few weeks ago about how Roe fell. And Roe fell not because of the Supreme Court, not because of the federal government, but because of a down ballot collapse in state legislatures starting 50 years ago when Roe was decided. anti-abortion activists started chipping away from day one, and they understood that you build real political power from the bottom up, not from the top down. We've seen this in Michigan when Dick DeVos, Betsy DeVos's husband, ran for governor a few cycles ago, spent $10 million of his own money and lost. Got his butt handed to him by Jennifer Granholm, who you may know as our energy secretary. But then they figured out they can have a lot more impact as a family if they bankroll every single Republican candidate running for state house and state senate. And you heard Chev talk about, 22 years in Florida, Republicans have been in control. In Michigan, the state senate has been GOP control since 1984. That is longer than I have been alive. And right now, Michigan is facing extreme violence. We saw the dry run for January 6th happen in Michigan with heavily armed gunmen come into our Senate chambers. And the difference between January 6th and Michigan is our Senate Republican majority leader invited them in. He invited them into the Capitol to threaten and intimidate us. And we've got extremists running for Secretary of State, for Attorney General, who will willingly overturn election results if they don't like them. So that comes down to state legislatures. This is where we can defend, and this is where we have to build out. We want to talk about winning the era. What is our era strategy? So first, we've got to look at the states where we can flip and we can defend. And I mean defending our very democracy, the core of our system. And that is in places like Michigan, Nevada. And then we start to build, right? We've got to build back and gain 1,000 state legislature seats that we lost starting in 2009, 1,000. So we got to chip back. We got to be honest with each other. I'm excited that this call, I don't think it's a mistake that those of us on this call are younger. We are a diverse bunch. We are very aggressive and outgoing. And I think that is the future of this party. But it gets to all of us and all of you recognizing how important these states are, how important state legislatures are. You may not know all of our names, but recognize we are the ones on the front lines right now. These are races that can be won or lost by a handful of votes that are often a couple $100,000. They are not $96 million that was spent on Amy McGrath to try to defeat Mitch McConnell. Think about that, $96 million. If we do this across the country, we start to write the playbook that every other state follows. This is how we take our country back. And that's why I'm so thankful to be here, so thankful for all of you for dipping a toe into the wild world of state legislatures, because we need you and we're so thrilled to have you.
Wow. Well, thank you. And you're right. This is when I was preparing for this, I was disgusted to see that all of you were younger than I am. But it is amazing because we do need the next generation of leadership. And that is what everyone on this call has been all about. And that's, I know a lot of the reason why a lot of people on this Zoom supported Pete, because it's about the next generation of leadership. And I'm going to drop a link into the chat for everyone. If you feel so inclined to support, the DLCC, Win the Era, the candidates who are the elected officials who are on the Zoom here, because the work we're doing is really important. And all we ask is this, is if you want to give, you should give, but just give whatever's meaningful to you, and understand that your money is going to go a lot further here than it will go in a U.S. Senate race. And as I stole the talking point from Mallory, I hope she's not mad about Amy McGrath, but she landed it better than I did. So I'm going to ask a few quick questions of you guys. And I know you guys work in politics and are politicians, so it's, but I'm going to ask you just to be brief in your answers so that we can just get to some audience questions here. But important thing, an interesting thing about three of you, beyond the fact that this is an interesting, diverse, younger group of barrier breakers, is, I say this in the best way possible, you represent three very gonzo states, right? States that have very big urban centers and also very rural areas. And you have to figure out how to bridge these divides. And part of the way that we'll, win back in Michigan or in Florida and hopefully sustain our majorities in Nevada is by bridging these divides and winning back Republican voters. And so I would be interested to hear from you guys, quickly, and I think everyone would be interested, is how do we bridge that divide? How do we win over Republicans? And I know, Sheb, you talked about this a little bit, but how do we bridge the urban-rural divide? And what are the best tactics that Democrats can employ based on your experiences in your states? And let's start with, let's go with Sheb, because I just called you out.
No problem. So I want us to take a step back, because and if we take and we strip ourselves of the party and just focus on what is the main human needs that we want, let's start there, right? I hear the noise, and we all hear the noise about what's happening nationally. And the reason why I'm starting there is because I did not care. Even when we went to knock on Republican doors in this open primary, and some of them didn't want to talk to me, granted, and that's fine. But the ones who were, when we sat down and talked and just asked the question of how you want your child to be educated, do you believe that everyone should be healthy? Do you believe that everyone deserves to live in a safe community? Start going by these things and see how they respond. I promise you, all of that is a part of what all of us want, whether Democrat or Republican. Along with that, it also is, how do you meet the needs to where people understand that, we're not going to agree on everything, but the things that we can agree on, can we agree that these are the things that can actually move this country forward, rather than us having these fights of CRT, or these fights of don't say gay, these things that all it does is ruffle feathers for a group of people for their base for votes. And so how can we win Republicans over? I think we have to be very honest with ourselves that if we call ourselves a big tent party, it can't be a big tent party just for Democrats. It needs to be a big tent party that includes everyone, and bringing those issues into where everyone who understands that even when I do come inside this tent, that you know what, we might not agree on those issues, but the areas where we can agree on, can we all understand that we all want the same thing, and that is to make sure that we live a free, fair life. And I'll end with this. But I think it's to be a very, very quick story. I know you said be brief for this, I promise. One of the doors I knocked on was a young lady who had been a Democrat, a Republican for over 30 years. I won her over by one thing, and that was because of the loss of her son. Her son was murdered by gun violence. We sat down and we talked about that. And I talked to her about the access of guns that we have on the streets. You know what she said? She said, no one has ever sat down and just had a conversation with me. And for that very reason, she said, not only am I going to support you, I want to look more at the other agendas of people. It's a longer story, but I think that we have to start having more conversation that comes to the tables, the pocketbooks, and the cookie jar of people, so they know that forget the party. How and what type of life do you desire to live?
I love that. And I know State Assemblywoman Howdegee. I got it. That you have to hop soon, but and it makes sense because you already control both the state ledge and the state house and the state senate there. But I would love to just kick it to you to share just some of your lessons there, because again, and I know someone in the comments said every state has big urban centers and rural communities, but I really do think that Michigan, Florida, Nevada are very unique politically and very diverse and offer unique dynamics. So I would love to hear from you about some of the unique dynamics and how you're able to overcome that divide in Nevada.
Thank you so much, Liz. And I think, Chef said it perfectly. I've always said, partisanship isn't leadership. And here we have to put people before party. And in my conversations with families throughout the state of Nevada, families want the same thing, whether you're a rural family, a Latino family, a Republican family, or a Democratic family, they all want the same thing. They want secure jobs. They want a roof over their head. They want access to health care, right? At an affordable cost. Despite what people think, they want a choice. They want access to reproductive freedom. All families want the same thing: education, a secure job and economy, health care, and to make decisions for their own body. And I think that's the message that we have to drive home, right? That the party that's going to deliver that is going to be the Democratic Party, right? That we're the candidates. And I think once they can get past the party politics, they see that, because we've done the same thing. We've been able to flip districts that have, you know, tight margins, and we've been able to hang on to our seats. And so I think when people get to know you as a candidate and know that you're there, and I think I could speak for me and my colleagues when I say that, like, we put people before party, I think that resonates with families no matter where you're located. And I do want to say thank you so much to Team Pete and to Win the Era. I actually have my campaign kickoff to go to at 3:30, so I am going to head out, but I want to say thank you so much, everyone. I'm excited to win in 2022 too.
Thank you, Sandra. And everyone go support Sandra. Make sure you go to that link. Okay, now let's go to Mallory. Very interesting dynamics there in Michigan, as you alluded to before. And I know you represent a district that is both suburban, and you represent suburban Detroit and also the city of Detroit. But in the state of Michigan, you also have very bizarre dynamics with the militias and the rural areas and all that. So I'd be very curious to hear what you have to say.
Listen, Michigan is everything all at once. I think a lot of people nationally, they look at Michigan and they look at people like Gretchen Whitmer, whose birthday was yesterday. She shares a birthday with me. It was very exciting. And you think that's got to be a blue state because you've got these badass progressive women running your state between Gretchen Whitmer, Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, Jocelyn Benson, our Secretary of State. On the flip side, we do have more homegrown militia activity than I think any other state in the country. And there is a real divide. You know, we've got the city of Detroit and we have got the entire Upper Peninsula, which a lot of people don't even realize. There's a whole separate part of the state that is extremely rural. But I think what's important here, and Chev and Sandra touched on it perfectly, is that your state legislators, we're the ones that show up. We're the ones that go door to door. We're the ones that have coffee hours. We're the ones that you actually see in grocery stores when you're not going to see the president. You're likely not going to see your US senator, especially in a large state, but you are going to see us. We're the ones that can actually build relationships with you every single day. And I know a lot of people have gotten to know me over the past few months in the wake of a speech that I gave in April. And you might think that I have always represented a very safe, solidly blue Democratic area, but I flipped the seat that I currently represent in 2018. I currently represent Mitt Romney's hometown. And I firmly believe that, yes, there are the pockets of extremists who will take to violence, who will take to threats, who don't believe in this country. And for us as Democrats, we've got to take patriotism back. We have to take the idea of freedom back. We have to stand firm in that as the defenders of this country and patriotism, but also just show up to people, because a wide majority of people believe in the basics of this country, believe in freedom, believe in a good education, no matter where you live, all of these things that all of us have said, but they need somebody that they can go back and forth with. And I have the same relationship with some of my constituents that I think Chev has, where people tell me, I don't necessarily agree with you on everything, but I trust you because you show up, you talk like a normal person, and I like you. But, you know, I don't agree with you on everything. So I think that's a lot of that is those of us on the state legislature level that you're going to support with events like this tonight. I'm so thrilled that Win the Era is a part of this now, because we are the face of that. For people who may not necessarily be totally sure about Democrats, who may look at, you know, the president's approval rating or what's happening, although that is changing because there's a lot happening on the federal level to celebrate right now too. But they can build relationships with us that are independent and give people the grace to vote for their country, because that's the moment that we're at right now. I often say to people, you know, it's not between Republicans and Democrats. It's between the people who want this country to work and the people who don't. The people want to tell you whether or not you can vote, if you can decide what to do with your own body, what books you can read, if you can even have a library, and what you're going to learn in school. I mean, that it is just basic freedoms. So I think that's how we get out there, and what is so unique about us and how we build those bridges is just show up and talk like a normal person. And people, it is shocking how far that goes with people who have never heard that, especially from politicians.
No, and that is a very Pete-like message. Show up, talk like a normal person. Also, treat other people with respect and decency. And if you give people permission to go along with you, then they're more likely to. And so I know that both of you are big believers in that. We're going to go a little bit longer than expected. Hopefully that's okay with you, Mallory. I know Chev is down with that. I wanted to ask some, again, Team Pete is not your average team of political supporters. This is a community that is very closely knit, that is very politically savvy. And I say this endearingly, very nerdy in terms of like the ins and outs of politics. So one thing I want to ask you guys, and also Jessica as well, is can one thing that Pete got a lot of attention for was how he innovated, right? And some of the innovative strategies he undertook as a presidential candidate in terms of his approach to the media, in terms of his approach to relational organizing. And can you guys tell me, what is one thing you guys would identify that you're doing in either at the DLCC, Jessica, I'd love to lead with you, or in Florida and Michigan, to that is new and different, innovative, that all of us can learn from and should talk to our friends about and talk to people in our states about and say, wow, this is a brilliant strategy, whether it has to do with communications, field, outreach, any of the above.
I think in politics, often what's old is new, but I'll talk about what we're doing with digital fundraising. So one challenge that our state legislative candidates have, if they're not sort of nationally recognized, is raising money online. And that's also true for the state legislative campaign arms, like the Michigan Senate Democrats or the Michigan House Democrats. And so one of the things that we've done is we've really invested in growing out those email lists, growing online communities, making sure that during session that legislators can communicate about what's happening during session to make sure that people can sort of stay engaged. And one challenge that we've had is there are people that live in Michigan, right, or that live in Florida that might write a check to a congressional race, the presidential race, but haven't wrote a check to some of their local officials or haven't donated online. And so that's a big thing that we're trying to change at DLCC. So we're ready to launch a national program in partnership with Act Blue. We have a proposal out to create just a huge additional network to try to shift that balance to get more resources and low dollar individual resources in the hands of legislators. We've realized that the Republicans, our Republican counterpart is going to raise 100 to 120 million this cycle, and will raise more than 50. So they will spend about $80 million on state legislatures. If you're coming out of the minority, the majority party has corporate interests and all of these like things around the state capitol. And it's going to take grassroots contributions, small contributions to make that change, to unseat the incumbent majorities in these places. So I'm very excited for that, and hopefully folks can be part of it.
Chev, Mallory, jump in.
Hey, so in Florida, I'll give you three of them. One of them I made mention of already, which is Operation Blackout. Where if you go to blackout.vote, that is one of the things that we are doing here in Florida, once again, to engage Black and brown voters in rural communities. We have a number of 40,000 engagement of Black and brown voters in these rural communities to register them for vote by mail. In the third week, when we launched Operation Blackout, we were able to register over 11,000 people to vote by mail. That number now is at about 23,000 people who we have already registered to vote by mail. Here's what we did. Here's what we've done with Operation Blackout. What we did was, with those names of those 23,000 people, we now went into their communities, hired regional field organizers. And with those field organizers, they have gone to those homes to knock on their doors to remind them that you registered to vote by mail, and to have them return their vote by mail ballot, not a week before election day, but the moment that they receive the election ballot. So that's the first thing. And that was for rural communities. For Starbucks community, which I call Starbucks community, which is like your Miami, your Orlando, your Duval area. I know, Mallory, I like coffee. But for your larger urban communities, I have been working with a lot of the legislators who want to model something that I do in my district, which is called We the People University. And that is engaging the community more in civic engagement. We cannot continue going into people's households, knocking on people's doors 9 months before elections. Year round civic engagement is what we have to get used to doing. I promise you, people enjoy it much better than showing up to their doors before election day and they're saying, you all only show up when it's time for us to vote for you. We're trying to change that narrative. And the last thing is a Florida Strong Finish, which is my political committee, which our main structure is to elect people who are on the bench, school boards and municipal races. We have to build a stronger bench. Building a stronger bench requires, like Mallory and I, we're in the state legislature now, which is great, right? That's fine. But there are people who are in our municipal races, in municipal government, and also running for school board, who we need to invest in. You know who's doing it? The Republicans are. The Republicans are building a bench from the school boards in some of these small cities. And so what we've done with Florida Strong Finish is said that we're going to contribute to young people who are running for school board, who are running for city government. And trust me, it works. We had 2 of them win yesterday, and that's how we start building a bench. We have to be committed to the long game.
Team Pete loves the long game. They love a good bench. And, you know, I mean, again, Team Pete's a team that supported a 37-year-old mayor from South Bend. So Mallory, over to you.
Yeah, I think, not to repeat things that have already been said, because these are all good strategies. But one thing we're learning in Michigan, so a highlight in Michigan has been our reproductive rights ballot initiative. If y'all haven't seen this, it is incredible. So in Michigan, we have direct democracy where citizens can put an amendment to the state constitution directly on the ballot. That requires approximately 425,000 physical signatures. This isn't a change.org petition. This isn't something you can do online. So Planned Parenthood, the ACLU, and a coalition called Michigan Voices, which is a coalition of groups of women of color, started this well before the Dobbs decision came down, started organizing, started getting out there. Within 24 hours of the Dobbs decision coming down, there were more than 75,000 people who signed up to volunteer for this organization. Volunteer, that's circulating petitions. We went out and turned things in, and the group ended up turning in 750,000 signatures, which is the most signatures for any initiative on any issue in state history. Now, this is something that is relatively new to us on the Democratic side, but this is something that Right to Life Michigan has been doing for decades. They know that even though they're on the wrong side of the issue, they've been running ballot initiatives every single cycle, every single year, even knowing that it will fail, because it does a few things. It gets people engaged, it gets them to build a list of potential volunteers, and then they've been able to shift coalitions of people to their candidates. That's something that, I'll be honest, we are a few decades behind on, but we are learning, and we are learning very quickly. We saw how energized and mobilized people are here in Michigan on this issue. So now not only is abortion very literally going to be on the ballot in Michigan this November, but now we see, I was able to go to rallies here in Michigan and tell people directly when the Dobbs decision came down, this is one state compared to, I talked to my legislative colleagues all around the country, where you are not powerless. And it's telling everybody the multiple steps. We've got this ballot initiative, we've got to reelect our governor, and we have to flip the Senate and the state house, where people like me, I have introduced the legislation to effectively codify Roe every single year since taking office in 2019 to protect it. So we don't get into a situation where if we pass this ballot initiative, we've got a Republican extremist legislature that's going to tear it down from the inside. So we know the energy is there. And I think that's a big learning for us in Michigan, kind of talking about what Chev talked about. If we engage people and we give them something to do that is meaningful, where you see direct democracy in action, you recognize that you are making a difference, you're going to want to come back. That's a thrilling feeling. That is much more powerful than getting on Facebook and yelling at your racist aunt. You don't want to do it. That's not a good feeling. Give people something to do that's meaningful, not just, I'm seeing a lot in the chat about the kind of fear-mongering texts about oh my God, Roe fell, donate $5. That's not a meaningful thing versus we lay out a very clear plan in Michigan. Here's why we're fundraising. Here are the people on the ballot. Here's this ballot initiative. Here's how you can participate and actually make a real difference. And then we need you to come back. And then we need you to come back and just treat people with respect. Treat voters with respect, treat volunteers with respect, and they will respect you back.
Yes, I love that. And respect is one of the rules of the road for Team Pete. So, and we take the rules of the road very, very seriously here. So a couple last quick questions, some of them derived from the chat, one is, again, Team Pete is a very thoughtful group and very interested in messaging. And so quickly, if you had to give Democrats, either in your state, nationally, a bumper sticker, what would you have it say? And then let's say a bumper sticker and then a 3-sentence paragraph. I know, guys, it's like a pop quiz. I'm the worst, and I know, but like, you never know what you're going to get with me, and you're on the spot.
I think you got to go talk like a person. I've been telling people since day one. So I came in from a very different career into politics, and I've always been telling people in this circle, talk about every issue like you would talk to your friends at a bar, which doesn't mean you're talking down to people. It just means use simple language. Be excited if it's something worth being excited about. I can't tell you the number of people over the past few months who just said they loved my speech because you felt the way that I feel. Like, if there's something to be angry about, be angry about it. Be willing to show a little bit of emotion and not be this like totally buttoned up robot of a person. So I think the bumper sticker is talk like a normal person. And then you heard my descriptor of what that actually looks like.
But what, and right, so don't be Mitt Romney, we got you. I know you represent his hometown.
Yeah.
Don't talk the trees are the right height. Don't say that. But in terms of a message for Democrats, what should they go out and say?
I think be proud to be a Democrat. Just be proud. We are so good at nitpicking each other. We do it so much more than Republicans nitpick us. We give them ammunition every single day. Be proud. We have a lot to be proud of. We are the party who stands for freedom and patriotism and democracy, the right to vote. I mean, all of it. We are the ones standing up for this country. And I always feel bad every time I see a Jeep with like 6 American flags on it. I automatically assume it's a Trumper. Why? It shouldn't be. That's us. Let's take it back.
I love that. I love that. Chef.
Listen, I'm Mallory is the spokesperson for this group on that one right there. I'm telling you. And Mallory and I have been on news together, and she does this so well in how we message and how we should be talking. I think it's true. It's true. Talk like human beings. Talk like who we are. I mean, we don't have to speak so high level. With the average person, all they want to know is that what are you going to do for me? They don't care whether you're gay. They don't care about all that stuff. They just want to know that you're there and you're fighting on their behalf. And so maybe that's a message. I mean, fighting for you. I don't know. All right. But I just think and just know that what we see and what I have seen, like Mallory has shared, and what Jessica shared at the top of this conversation, is that most people just want to know that they are being represented. And trust me, the noise that we hear is the minority of those people. The majority of the people are sick of the backlash. They're sick of the culture wars. They're sick of all these things. The Democrats, we do have the message. We do have the momentum. We have all these things. But if we are this big tent party, how are we welcoming people into this big tent party? Something that is a question that we have to ask ourselves. How we message that, I think that's the difficult part. And I apologize, Liz. I don't have that answer, because the message that might work in Nevada or the message that might work in Colorado doesn't work in Florida. And that's why I'm not a fan of parachuting people in from communities to other communities and saying, hey, go help us get the vote out in this area. What? How? Yeah, I don't know this area, right? I'm from Miami. And so I can't go to Pensacola and tell them, hey, listen, I'm your new field organizer. Like, they're gonna look at me like, really? And so I just think that we have to make sure that we're matching the message with the area, that match the message with the people who live in those areas.
I mean, man after my own heart. It was sort of a trick question, and both of you answered it well. And Jessica, like 50 states, you got 50 states, everywhere from Alaska to New York to Florida to Michigan to Nevada to Texas. What do you think? Because I know folks who are on the Zoom are really interested. What do you think Dem's message should be, or what we should try to convey? Bumper sticker, paragraph, whatever it is.
I think we lost the advantage on the economy over the years. And really, it's, Republicans that are doing all these tax giveaways. They don't have any solutions for inflation. So I think that anything that we can do to establish our candidates as people that are willing to focus on lowering costs and making things easier for working families, I think that's the way we've got to go in this cycle. But with what Liz said, I tell our candidates, when you knock on doors, listen to what the voters are saying and then reflect that back and use that natural language. Don't use the language your political consultant told you to use.
Right.
Listen to how the voters are talking, right? Exactly. And communicate that you're listening and want to help them.
Okay. And there's not a lot of fun in politics and everything seems so serious right now, but there must be ways, right, that you're still conveying fun here. And so tell me about like good events that you guys are doing in the community, in your communities, that are like bringing people out, bringing non-traditional voters in, people maybe who aren't regular voters, right? Because that's how we're going to need to win these elections. And if there are like any interesting tactics, I know I keep going back to this, but I'm really curious. And Team Pete is always very curious about these sorts of things. So I would love to hear from you guys about any sort of fun and joy. Joy is another rule of the road, that you guys are bringing to the campaign trail.
Yeah, so I love this. One of the best pieces of feedback that I get from constituents is, so here's a dirty secret. I am not a native Michigander. I know that is scandalous when you are a local level elected official, but I've had people tell me, people who are born and raised here, live their entire life here, that have said, you make me so proud of my hometown in a way that I haven't felt in years. That's the feedback that I love, because I chose this place. I love this place. And that's why I get so angry when people try to destroy it. But one thing we do that I love that we do on my campaign is we do a stand-up comedy fundraiser every year with a very foul-mouthed female comedian friend that I have had, which I know like some political consultants are like, that's too risky. You can't be talking about those sorts of things. But let me tell you, especially in the suburbs, there are some ladies who either didn't vote or voted with their husbands who got really pissed off over the past few years, who just want a night out with each other to vent and find each other. And they have become some of my most diehard, ride or die volunteers, donors, supporters, just because we gave an outlet to like all come together and laugh, because we got to laugh so we don't cry every day.
Noted and taken. Thank you, Mallory. I will text you about that later, sis. Something that we do on the campaign trail is two things. We do cocktails and conversation, which is a opportunity for the community to come out. You can grab your drink and we sit around and we talk. I listen, and we allow the community to converse and to talk. We also do coffee and conversation for our seniors, which we do once every other month at Starbucks, who donated the space to our seniors who can come out to be a part of it. Something that our first thing that we're about to do, and we haven't done before. I totally nicked doing a victory party yesterday because I just think it's just plain and played out. And I know the stakes are just so high in Florida. So we are having next month a Be Out Day, like an end of summer day, where we are going to have music, food trucks. I'm inviting the governor, Charlie Crist out, other statewide candidates to be a part of it, and to and also allowing other, not candidates, but elected officials to come out so you can introduce yourself to the constituents. It's the end of summer, and so we're going to have live music and everything. It's called Be Out Day, and I stole the name. Actually, I graduated from Florida A&M University, and before, in the middle of the school year, we would have a thing called Be Out Day, which is just a day of so much fun, different things, different food trucks, different tents. And so I translated that into the community, and I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great.
Can I get an invite to that?
Absolutely.
I would love to.
You just want to come to Miami, Liz. You can come.
I know. And Jessica, and by the way, amazing answers. And this is why I wanted to close with this, but Jessica, are there any, tell me some joy that the DLCC is bringing, or that you've seen in campaigns, and some tactics, because politics can't just be about making people drink cough syrup, right? And we all know that part of how we bring people, how we get people out to vote and get people to decide is, yes, being normal, but bringing joy to this process.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this is about building community and campaigns and making sure the campaigns are connecting with each other, just like Team Pete and whatever we decide the Mcmorrow group is. On Friday, I'm doing a fundraiser these women in Northern Virginia, which I now live in Northern Virginia, decided to try to get folks to door knock in the swing areas of Virginia, which is a little far away in Abigail Spanberger's district. And it happens to have a number of wineries. So we're working together to get a sort of a party bus to go down, drop women off to sort of knock all over the district. And, hopefully, since we're still in Northern Virginia, there's enough similarities. I really appreciate what Senator Jones said as well. And then after that, go to the winery. So a way to get people to come together and have fun. And then hopefully they'll continue to donate and be engaged.
Well, I mean, what a great note to close on. And whether it's live music, foul mouth comedy, wineries, you guys really know the way, at least to my heart. But seriously, thank you. And thank you to Jessica, thank you to Sheb, thank you to Mallory, thank you to Sandra, who had to jump off. But thank you to everyone who joined here, and I mean, I'm looking at this and I think there are like 115 people still on here. And what an amazing, amazing community we were able to build in 2020 with Team Pete. And there are very few communities that I've encountered in politics where we can have a conversation like this, where we can fucking nerd out over state ledge races, the tactics, bumper stickers, joy, the rules of the road. And, I know Pete's not here physically or whatever, but I cannot wait to tell him about how well this went and how, while he's doing the very important work of being Secretary of Transportation and hopefully bringing projects to your district, Sheb, and Mallory's and all that, but going out there and doing, frankly, nonpartisan but very important work, work that will create jobs, reduce inequality, help underserved communities, and bridge so many divides that I know that Pete would be so proud to know that all of you are here today and contributing to this really important cause and something that is really, really important to him. And as I started out the call by saying, the presidency isn't the only office that matters. And that was a guiding principle of, ironically, of Pete's presidential campaign. But it should be the guiding principle of Team Pete. And it should be the guiding principle of Democrats as a whole. And so I'm going to drop the link in here one more time for folks. And again, if you can contribute, we would be so thankful for it. And understand that your contribution, whether it's $1, 50 cents, $50, $100, that this is money that is not going to be wasted on high-priced political consultants or viral political ads that will be seen millions of times on Twitter but won't change a single thing in the election. This is a contribution that will help Jessica, who has been working for so long, finally help Democrats realize the importance of state legislative races and help Mallory flip this state senate, help Sheb flip it's a state senate in Florida that the state senate there. And I just want to extend a big thank you, I think, as Staffer Zero from Team Pete, to all of you, because this is the most amazing political community I've ever been a part of. And all of you are the greatest supporters, and I cannot wait to report back. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And Maxwell, Anthony, is there anything else that you want to add before we close this out?
No, that was terrific. Thank you all so much for joining us on a summer day. And there's 70 something days. I start to not like to count. 76 after 100. But thank you all so much. And we'll see you. We're going to do a bunch more of these throughout the fall. So we will see you very soon.
And I'm gonna make sure that they keep them as fun as this one is. And but it really, 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 really thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I cannot wait to report back to Pete about this and your dedication, your commitment. So really, I love each and every one of you.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks so much.
Katie.